galopan aguas arriba, con las crines de cristal y las patas encendidas.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the People's World Mundo Popular Immigrant Rights Town Hall. To listen in Spanish, please refer to the slideshow on the screen. I would also like to acknowledge our interpreters, Ernest, Nino, Murcia, and Lumia Baker. Thank you very much. And now to introduce the panelists, Maria Lena Durazo. Before her election to the California State Senate, Maria Lena served as Executive Vice President of Unite Here International Union and was an organizer of the Immigrant Workers Freedom Ride. She was the first woman Secretary Treasurer of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO, and served on the National Executive Board. She was born to migrant worker parents and was part of the Chicano movement. While working as a union organizer, she got her law degree in 1985 and has served on many boards, commissions, and political campaigns. Thank you, Maria Elena. And also Alberto Bernardis. Alberto is a district leader with the 32BJ, which goes from Miami up to the northeast of the Service Employees International Union, SEIU. He is also a regional director of SEIU's International Latin America Caucus. And all of this after starting out as a rank and file member in 1984. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In his youth, he became a leader for the rights of his Garifuna community in Honduras, and then immigrated to the United States in 1984. Alberto has organized immigrant worker building cleaners, security guards, and the fast food workers into unions for political campaign, and also has participated in many political campaigns in many states. We also have Alejandro Murguia Ortiz. Alejandro is a community organizer with the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice in the American Friends Service Committee. Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice is a statewide membership-based legal service and advocacy organization driven and led by immigrant and refugee voices and united with allies in Iowa dedicated to transform unjust systems and build a powerful movement for immigrant rights at all levels. Both of his parents work in meatpacking here in Iowa. Thank you all. And now we will go to the moderators, starting out with Roberta Wood. And Roberta, if you just, there you go.
Happy Father's Day to all you dads out there, and thanks for making this important discussion a part of how you commemorate this celebration. My name is Roberta Wood, she, her. I'm senior editor at People's World Mundo Popular. We have an amazing trio of panelists tonight with a universe of experience in immigrant rights struggles. From the West Coast to the Midwest to the East Coast. We want to dig into some difficult questions, some deep questions, and have time for the listeners to ask their own questions. You can submit your questions in the chat. So I'm going to ask the panelists to limit their contribution to for each question to less than 5 minutes so we can get to all of it. And I'll help you out with that with a 30-second heads up. So let's get started. Senator Durazo, you led the Hotel and Restaurant Employees Union for almost 20 years in LA. And this is a union that's made up of an amazing array of immigrant workers. And now you represent a district in Los Angeles with that same amazing diversity, including Mexican Americans, other Latin Americans, Koreans, Filipinos, Thai, Japanese, Chinese. Under your leadership and that of Miguel Contreras, you linked immigrant rights struggles with that of the African American people, and you've shown how the workers' struggles can go from the streets to the bargaining table to the legislature. So Senator Durazo, could you share with us the struggles you're involved in today to support undocumented essential workers and all immigrant workers? Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta, and great to be with you all today. Feliz Dia de los Padres. Happy Father's Day to not only the men who are fathers, but to the women who play the role of another parent in that house, in their household and in your families. Yes, to me, the issue of immigrants' rights, the issue of racism and people of color is completely integrated into their rights as workers. So some of the things that we have been tackling, that I have been tackling alongside my sisters and brothers, are in various industries that are made up primarily of immigrants and people of color, but that still have not gotten even some of the basic rights. And others were moving forward in a big way. So I have a bill right now, SB 62, which would close the loophole, another loophole, because employers always seem to create new ones, another loophole when it comes to wage theft in the garment industry. And we propose to eliminate the piece rate. Now, if the industry was completely unionized, which at one point there was a higher unionization, then piece rate was negotiated. When you don't have a union, when you don't have collective bargaining, then that piece rate is decided and determined exclusively by the company and the employer. And the workers don't have anything to do with that. And it's used more as a tool to sort of speed up the manufacturing and speed up the production. We have found in Los Angeles, study after study has shown workers making as little as $5 an hour when the minimum wage is almost $15 an hour. So that's one big piece, and I'm working alongside with the Garment Workers Center. They are extremely active. Second is SB 321, which would eliminate the exemption to California's Occupational Safety and Health Act for domestic workers. Domestic workers still work under much of the legacy of slavery, when African-American women were pretty much considered the property of their household, their employers, that they worked for. And so we still have that legacy that health and safety laws are not, do not apply to domestic workers. We've gained some a few years ago, gained the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, but it does not include Cal OSHA, and so we're doing that. And then a couple quickly more is SB 700, which is to address the crisis of worker misclassification in the ports, the port truck drivers, and make sure that they could qualify for unemployment insurance. We found during the pandemic that they didn't qualify because they were always being misclassified as independent contractors. Finally, we want to take a big step forward for Medi-Cal for all by covering $250,000 more undocumented in our Medi-Cal system, healthcare system. So we hope to take a big step forward on that. So I don't know, I could go on with a few more examples. We did win into law. First in the nation is the right of hospitality workers to get their jobs back. No, they don't have to fear losing their jobs during the pandemic. So already thousands of workers are getting their jobs back, especially women who are always used to keep from getting their jobs back after a recession or an economic. Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you. Right on time. And congratulations on that victory. I know here in Chicago, that just passed that right to return ordinance that's going to have enormous impact, even for the non-union members. It'll mean a lot. So let's move on to Alberto Bernardis. Alberto, in last year's pandemic, it was immigrant workers who faced the greatest dangers in their jobs interacting with the public. And yet, in the case of the undocumented, they were excluded from any public assistance, including unemployment comp. But in the midst of the pandemic, you were involved in organizing workers at subway stores, I understand, on the expressway stops. Can you tell us about your activities that you're involved in now on the ground that support immigrant workers?
Yeah. Good day, good afternoon, everybody, brothers and sisters. Thank you. Roberta, again, my name is Alberto Bernardis, and I'm a district leader in Connecticut for 32BA, and a chair for the International Latino Caucus for SEIU. Thank a lot for giving us the opportunity to be part of this very important conversation. thank the People Board for hosting it. And the People Board has been part of all of our campaigns over here, basically in Connecticut at the New Haven People Center has been constant support for our organizations. Not only providing facilities, but also lining up community support, using their political capital to help workers. I mention all of this because organizing is at the heart of all of our effort on behalf of immigrants. And it's inseparable from the struggle on social justice, economic justice, racial justice, climate justice. To separate that, we will see all the roadblocks amplified. So yes, we have been working hard at the rest stops in Connecticut, and also working throughout our jurisdictions, including Miami. So it's been kind of difficult in the sense that many of those workers, essential workers, were working under COVID. Many of them kind of got sick, and they were not protection. Actually, we have two groups of workers at those rest stops. One group is already unionized with 32BJ, but fast service workers were not. The 32BJ members have health care, and also had a system in place for check and balances, but that wasn't the case with the fast food workers. But again, fortunately, we're talking about courageous workers. Those immigrant workers, fight is not new for them, and they raised up to the occasions. They went to numerous strikes, and they were able to, in many cases, to extract victories from their employers, including winning $900,000 from McDonald's for many of those workers. And again, I want to remind everybody, the rest stops is state facilities. Those workers are entitled to a standard wage law, but somehow they fell on the cracks, and they end up earning mostly minimum wages with no protection, with no health care, and working on estate properties. But that's why the community has responded massively. We have run those campaigns relentlessly. Even at the scariest moment of the COVID-19, hundreds of people have come to support those workers working on that campaigns. And I think it's something that we can over here be proud in Connecticut. Our community has responded greatly, and we actually hope that soon we're going to be delivering a victory for those workers, And also parallelly to that, we were running campaigns in Florida for building cleaners workers. During the last contract negotiation, we were able to introduce language that once we reach the threshold of 60% of the buildings in the union, those workers will have the right, to choose to be part of the union.
So thank you, Alberto. Maybe we can hear more about that campaign in the next round of questioning.
Oh, okay.
It's so interesting what you were able to do in the middle of a horrible pandemic. Let me go on to Alejandro. Alejandro, this time last year, the coronavirus was roaring through meatpacking plants in Iowa, and immigrant workers like your parents were impacted. You built a group to fight for worker safety on Facebook. Could you share with us the struggles on the ground that you're currently involved in to support immigrant workers, especially the undocumented, and the work of the organizations you work with, the American Friends Service Committee and the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice?
Thank you, Roberta. Yeah, so as you mentioned, it was about a year ago where, I mean, we were frankly still seeing outbreaks, even though like a majority of the outbreaks in those meatpacking plants happened in April into May and such, if I remember correctly. But, you know, the pandemic continued to be an issue in those facilities throughout the year, and even to you know, to this day, there's still either, you know, ongoing issues just for many reasons, right? Issues that have long existed in the industry, you know, fast line speeds, unsafe work conditions. And what really ended up happening because of the pandemic is that I think people, you know, who would otherwise not be aware of this industry, you know, got a chance to see the injustices that exist in the industry and really in a lot of industries as a whole. So, you know, I started organizing around that time because my family works in the industry with my parents, and, you know, much of my extended family does. So that's how I got involved. And that's why, you know, much of the work that I've continued to do. But what, you know, by getting involved there is, you know, you kind of start to see and learn why those issues were allowed to happen. And there are so many underlying issues, whether that's specific to the individual plant, whether that's specific to the state of Iowa, or even the nation as a whole. There's just layers of barriers that folks face internally and externally, just simply in trying to survive, and then having to go work somewhere, forced long hours, in conditions that are unsafe even outside of a pandemic. So I'm still talking to workers in the industry, and while a lot of those issues are, you know, looking very different, we're still, you know, are having regular meetings there to try to identify the ongoing injustices. And, you know, people are still, whether it's related or unrelated to COVID, people are still being mistreated or retaliated against because of, you know, their desire to be safe, their desire to seek medical attention and to take time off because of medical needs, whether that's, you know, them being sick, or whether that's because they were injured. You know, we see that, you know, in many cases, workers are being forced to go into the workforce. And a lot of it is the you know, essentially the upper hand that these companies have for, you know, economic reasons, and in many cases for immigration reasons. A lot of this industry is, you know, undocumented workers. My father worked in there when he was undocumented, and we, you know, that that's the case, and that's how it's going to continue to be. And these are going to be the same workers that have been and will continue to be ignored by legislators and by elected officials in general, by the industry. And, you know, so essentially we have to just keep pushing, you know, here at the local level, the state level, and at the national level, because we know that in the same way that they were the first to really see those massive outbreaks, they weren't the first to get the vaccine, and they will be the first to be put again, you know, on the line if there is another outbreak of sorts. And we know that, you know, that's likely going to happen. You know, when that's going to be, I think we don't know, but, you know, if we're going to be prepared, we have to ensure that we're taking care of everyone, and that these same workers aren't forced to you know, go into these dangerous conditions, and that we expand like our medical coverage, our everything that we can, every attention that we all get, every benefit that we get, that we're able to extend that to the workers that are on the front lines, many of whom are undocumented. So, you know, the intersections of the, you know, labor, labor movement, labor work, as well as, immigrant rights. That's, much of what we continue to fight for, is ensuring that, our undocumented friends, families, and neighbors aren't being left out of the support that we get, and that, we continue to expand on, the opportunities that we give folks to, to stay here and to, continue their lives, and to, really find, abilities to really, support themselves under, our current economic structure. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. And thanks for the great work you're doing. I just want to remind folks, if you have a question you want to put to the panelists, you can go ahead and type it into the chat. And at the end of the session, we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. And now I'd like to turn the mic over to our next moderator, Jesus Jaime Diaz.
Buenas tardes, good evening, comunidad, community. My name is Jesus Jaime Diaz, co-director of the Earth Labor College in Tucson, Arizona, along the Sonoran borderlands. I will be posing a second question to our panelists. Sorry for the time crunch. I'll give you a reminder. You have 5 minutes to answer the question. I'll give you about a 30-second heads up before your time expires. So my first question will be to Senator Maria Elena Durazo. It'll be the same question for everyone. How do you see the struggle for the 11 million going forward and prospects for comprehensive immigration reform this year? What has happened so far and what needs to be done? Senadora, the floor is yours.
Okay, gracias, Jesus. And I also want to give a shout out to Rosalio, my good friend who lives in my district and who is, no matter what, nothing seems to hold him down. So gracias, Rosalio, for everybody in LA recognizes your extraordinary leadership. So some of us have been fighting for decades, starting just a few years after Reagan signed the amnesty bill in 1986. We jumped in and did all that. I know for youngsters like Alejandro, he doesn't even know what I'm talking about. But we were able to win back then with that struggle, a very simple process of amnesty. Within 5 years, you became a citizen. They were pretty much like minuscule barriers. For the most part, you got your application in and you went through the process. That was it. Within 5 years, 2 million people became citizens. It was an extraordinary victory in our movement that we had been engaged in before. Ever since then, we have not been able to make the kind of progress on the federal front that we need and that our communities deserve. And I especially want to point out that about 75% of undocumented are in mixed status families. So when there's impact on an undocumented, there's impact on a citizen child. When there's impact on a undocumented, there's a legal resident who gets impacted. This is not like, segregated. We are all integrated. Where we shop, where we live, where we go to work, where we, whatever we do, go dancing that night, doesn't matter. We are all completely integrated. So the impact of this is not that the overwhelming majority of Latinos or immigrants in this country are undocumented. It's that the impact on them has a direct impact on everybody else. And that's why it becomes such a high on our agenda. So we have certain pieces of a comprehensive reform that we need. We want to make sure that our DACA, our youth, they're probably a little bit older than when they first started out, but the younger part of our undocumented. So we want to make sure DACA gets processed through and approved. There's our TPS. Right before I left the union, that was our last thing that we had spent a few years on already, was to get the labor movement involved with the struggle of the TPSers. We were started to make some progress, but of course, under Trump, there was no chance of getting what was needed. And I know that especially for our Haitian brothers and sisters, the TPS is especially important, but also Central Americans. And there's new bills, legalization for essential workers. That's the new term to describe what we know has been going on forever. Essential workers and immigrant workers and workers of color have always been essential workers. Whether you're a farm worker or a garment worker, a healthcare worker, that's always been the case. But now there's a proposal for status for essential workers and of course farm workers. So these are the big pieces that are there. Of course, we're working, and President Biden has revised the refugee admission limit, which has increased the number compared to what Trump had knocked it down to practically nothing. We're trying to address the citizens application process to speed that up and also to cut down the fees of it. We still keep trying to stop because it rears its ugly head, and that is the detention of immigrants and law enforcement. How do you totally keep those separate? I know in California we have several laws. We have one right now where we're trying to again strengthen our ability to supervise and be vigilant legally over the conditions in detention centers. We outlawed here private for-profit detention centers and prisons. And guess, lo and behold, literally days before it went into effect, all these private for-profit prisons put their application in under Trump and got it through. So now there still exists for another 15, 20 years. So these, I think, are the big pieces where we have to address ICE. Now, ICE may not be arresting.
Senadora, about 15 seconds, Senadora, 15 seconds.
See, our increase in ICE detentions is not in the streets as much as it is on the border. So that's what we have to stay vigilant over. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Senadora Elena Durazo. Next up, compañero Alberto Bernardis. So the question, compañero, how do you see the struggle for the 11 million going forward and prospect for comprehensive immigration reform this year? What has happened so far and what needs to be done? 5 minutes.
I think I'm going to pick up where the senators left, so I don't have to repeat some of the things that we know have happened. What I think is that we own to appreciate the challenges that lie ahead and plan accordingly. We need to continue our local and state effort to pass legislation to improve the life of essential workers. The right to organize is at the center of that. State legislation such as hospice for all immigrants and pandemic relief for all the workers, regardless of their status, I think gotta be considered and pushed for, and we think is happening in some sites. And looking forward, have a plan for comprehensive immigration reform. We got rid of Trump. I think that was a good first step. And some of his executive order, like redirecting the 2.2 million he has diverted for the wars and remain in Mexico protocol, hope no longer in effect. But McConnell is still negotiating from a position of power. Right? And some Democrats won't line up to get rid of the filibuster. That I think is going to be necessary to move our agenda. So we need to look ahead at the next election and make sure that Democrats not only keep control of the House and the Senate, but increase their majority. And we have to put emphasis on that effort. I just think that we should not, and it happened before, right? We have spent a lot of time debating among ourselves what the right immigration reform should be when we ourselves, cannot control the outcome. So instead of doing that, then we should be creating the condition that I mentioned before, and to work hard for the next election. And I'm sure that is a very frustrating proposition that every 2 years we have to be talking about waiting for the next right political wind to sail toward immigration reform. But I think that what is take to move us there, and we have to continue doing that work. And I think parallel to that, some of the policies that it was mentioned, but not given details, like working on the cause of mass immigration to the United States that was mentioned by Vice President Harris, but it's kind of a little bit late. I would say 40 years late for that, but something can be done on that regard. But it's gonna be big, right? Her proposal of $130 million for Mexico over 3 years is just, I think, laughable because it won't make a dent on it. Or the call don't come from Guatemala sounds like, don't use drugs from the time Bush in office. So we need to do much better than that. We need to continue organizing and doing all of those little things, because while McConnell is calling the chat, there's not much that can be done for immigration reform as the way that we envision. But I think we can continue doing the local and the state work that we've been doing, and we should get ready to continue doing the hard work. As frustrating at my sound, but we need to increase our political capital to be able to make a dent. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, compañero Alberto. So, question next to el compañero Alberto Ortiz. So, compañero, how do you see the struggle for the 11 million going forward and prospect for comprehensive immigration reform this year? What has happened so far and what needs to be done? 5 minutos, compañero. No, I'll give you first.
Sorry, did you jump to me? I didn't hear.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I wasn't sure if I heard my name or not.
Yeah,
thank you. Well, I think that it's tough because I think a lot of people are very especially when we're talking about politics, when we're talking about legislation and electoral politics. I don't think that we're really where we need to be to earn people's trust in those processes, especially when we're talking about immigrants' rights. And I think that much of that is because there's typically not, from historically, it's immigrants' rights has been kind of like pushed aside to, continue another fight, maybe another really important fight, right? But we saw this under Obama as well, coming into office, saying there will be, legislation. I don't know how similar to what we're looking at now, but, coming in and that, unable to accomplish that. And then unfortunately, we result on kind of the flip reverse of, politically. And it's kind of this back and forth without any really true movement in that sense, even though we do have a history of, having some victories, as was mentioned by the senator, one that my dad actually benefited from. And I think that, while I can't be someone that can speak to, the movement that happened then and how that transpired and such, it does, I think we can always look to the past to see what we can accomplish in the future. And I think that, unfortunately, I don't believe that our leaders are actually pushing hard enough. I don't think that any increase in deportations, whether or not it's at the border or here, is acceptable. And I know many of you here in the community feel the same way. And, as well as, what we're hearing is increases to the budget to ICE and CBP that we continue to see even under this administration is very discouraging. And again, things that we, in talking to folks is it's concerning. I think that there's a lot of conversations that can be had about, the reputation that, while very different from Trump's, that Obama had in terms of, deportations and such, and one that I've had to have a lot of conversations with folks to not be discouraged about, supporting, voting against, for instance, Trump, or, where you have to have very long conversations with people on these issues, because even Democrats don't have in many people's eyes the best track record of truly fighting for this legislation. So whether that means folks that they themselves would benefit from this type of legislation, but then going on to vote for even potentially Trump himself is things that uphill battles that I think we see, unfortunately, more often than we should. And I think it's because of just how this political process, electoral politics, and all of this, how it's not very inviting. It's not something that folks feel like they're a part of. And I think that that's for many reasons, whether that's because I don't believe that our leadership wants folks to be a part of that process, as well as, we're not organized to be a part of that process right now, at least not everywhere. I'm sure that might look different in different places, but I haven't seen that, a level of organization for us as a people to truly have a true impact, right now versus at the ballot box for, this type of legislation to push forward. And, I think that as Alberto was saying, there's a lot we can do locally. And I think that is going to help in building that organizing and that momentum to have those wins here locally to then, use that momentum to, push our legislators. But until, we're really organized in that sense, and honestly, I think, until we're, pushing them in ways that maybe may make more of us a little bit more uncomfortable, I think that might have to be, what we have to see. I think it's just if we continue to be we just gotta win the next election, which is a cycle that we're gonna find ourselves forever until we get out of that. There's the stacks are gonna, the layers are just gonna stack on top of everything. So.
Muchas gracias, compañero Alejandro Ortiz.
Okay.
So now, compañero Joe Henry will take the floor, next moderator, to present the question.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. So now the third round. So here's a question, and Maria Elena, you are going to be the first one here. And also, please give your closing remarks, because I know that it's time crunch right now. But here is a question. How do you view U.S. policies in Latin America and the effects on immigration?
Well, there's no doubt, with very rare exception, like a natural disaster, an earthquake or something, there's no doubt that U.S. policy of intervention in Latin America has led to the kind of, one, economic, the poverty. It has led to political instability. It has led to violence, either through war or through the aftermaths of war. It has led to dictators, gaining control of government in many countries. That some version of that is what pushes people to leave their countries. They don't want to leave their countries. They want to stay in their home. They want to survive in their home. They want to raise their family. They want a good job in their home country. They don't want to come here. It's such a lie and a myth that somehow it's easy for people to pack up or for their unaccompanied minors to travel thousands of miles to come to this country. Those children and youth, they don't want to come. They don't want to leave their parents. They don't know where they're at. They just know they're traveling somewhere that is supposed to be safer, that is supposed to provide a new opportunity for them. We have 3 new centers in California for these unaccompanied minors, and to talk to them, to feel them as to what they're going through. They did not want to come to this country, and they should not have to come to their country, but for our policies. And so, I'm glad to hear the words that we're going to do more to help the economies of those countries. But as the brother said, we really do have to help those economies. We can't help them led by our economic greed and our economic needs of these corporations. So, as long as they're getting paid, 50 cents, $1 an hour, $2 an hour, and there's violence, then those sisters and brothers and families are going to come. And it is our direct policies that have the worst impact on those countries. We're dealing with the symptoms of people coming, not with the root cause. Oh, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you very much, but would you like to give closing remarks, because I know you have to go?
Yeah, I just want to thank all my sisters and brothers on here who put this program together, who do the work every single day. And I want to challenge us that when we say, let's push people to do more, it shouldn't be just the legislators, it's our community. Every time I talk to our community has to jump in and do more. All of us have to do a whole lot more. We're not going to get comprehensive reform unless there is a much more demanding, massive outpouring of people into the streets. And I think that's got to be something, that message that we take everywhere we go. That's that organizing, getting out and taking those kinds of strong actions, and putting real value to the vote. That the vote is not something to be taken lightly by anybody. So let's give it the true value that it deserves, and use it in a much more powerful way. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate what everybody does. And I hope to talk to you, run into you, and organize alongside of you in the future. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria.
Bye.
Gracias.
And now we'll kind of mix it up. Well, Alejandro, do you want to go next? You got 5 minutes, and we'll go to Alberto.
Yeah, and can you just repeat the question there?
Yes. So the question is, how do you view U.S. policies in Latin America and the effects on immigration here in the U.S.?
Right. And I think, she kind of spoke to, I don't know if you saw my nodding the whole time, spoke to really, what it comes down to. And I think that it's, again, our intervention, something that we have a long history with, a very long history with, and sadly a even recent history with, and and that's why this continues to happen, and why the lasting effects of much of what we've been involved with, whether that is in Latin America or whether that's overseas, that's again something that continues to contribute to the instability of the world, truly. So I don't know if I have too much more to contribute to that, other than we have to be definitely have to be welcoming, but not be creating the circumstances that lead to devastation or just poverty or violence in other countries. So while I think it's promising that there are things that I think even this administration has talked about, there's still concern that even under our current administration that is something that we're going to be involved with. And if that's the case, then I think whether it's the community, whether it's all of us, that we should be out on the street pushing against it. So thank you.
Well, Alejandro, thank you very much. You're doing the work on the ground. You're the young one here, and you're telling us how you see things, because both your parents are immigrants. So you are sensing it and you're working it. So next we'll go to Alberto. Alberto, here you'll have 5 minutes again. And the question is, how do you view U.S. policies in Latin America and the effects on immigration here in the U.S.?
Thank you. And I, a little bit more than just view I lived it, and from Honduras, from a minority group of African descendants called Garifuna. During the reign of the Banana Corporation, I think that was our 90% of our jobs available for us was on the banana industry. You know, so some people might, when they hear the term Banana Republic, you know, they will think that it's related to the countries that are run by unscrupulous politicians, which in a lot of cases that's the case, you know. But in particular for Honduras is because Honduras was ran by 99 years by the banana companies. You know, the Standard Fruit Company, Cuyamel Fruit Company, Tela Fruit Company, all based in New Orleans. And our dictators and army were at all time at their services. You know, might think that they were running the country. No, the banana bosses were running the country. And that had left some marks in the country that it will take another 100 years to cure. And that's exactly what led to those mass immigration. When it wasn't in their convenience to continue cultivating bananas in Honduras, after misusing the greatest valleys that we have served to cultivate basic grains, and they have run that to the ground. Then the banana companies left and they pick up the railroad, you know, they closed the hospital, they took everything with them, you know. And the first group that massively immigrated to the United States was the Garifuna people. You know, we were able to kind of match into the communities in the Bronx and Brooklyn and New Orleans. It was probably less noticeable than what it is today, but it's been there. It's been there for quite some time. And any resistance to that control was seen at the time from the lens of the Cold War. You know, people will be accused of, you know, insubordination and all kind of things, end up in jail and disappear. You know, so that was followed by the war on drugs, and then by a bunch of other wars. But it's a non-ending situation. And United States policy has been part of it throughout our history. And probably United States better policy has to be part of the solution. That's why I was concurring with Vice President, that might be something to look at and do in bigger scale. We can start diverting the $2.2 million not spent on the wall into creating a wall there, a wall of economic progress that people don't have to leave their families. You know, as the senator says, nobody's happy by leaving their kid behind, and nobody's happy by seeing their kids, you know, take the road, not knowing when they're gonna see them again. You know, it's a sad story. I have lived it myself, and you gotta stop. Thank you.
Alberto, thank you very much. Your voice is very important here. You lived it. You were there 20 some years before you came to the US. You know, it's like being in the union movement as a leader. Your voice is very important in and out of the union movement. And now we're going to go to Roberta Wood, and she is going to make an appeal for donations to the People's World and Mundo Popular. Go for it, Roberta.
Oh, you stole my intro. Okay. Thank you for that slide here, folks. People's World is sponsoring this town hall, and it is a unique news source. News and analysis that's written by people themselves, the people who are in the thick of the struggle, people like our panel today. We're fighting for immigrant rights, for workers' rights, for solidarity, Black Lives Matter, for the working class around the world, for prison abolition, for voting rights, good paying, safe jobs, a livable environment, against wage theft, and yes, tax the rich. In other words, people before profits. People's World and Mundo Popular carry the voices of unions and people's organizations, including the Communist Party. So, hearing this, are you surprised that People's World Mundo Popular has no corporate sponsors? But there's something better than corporate sponsors, and that's you. So we're asking you to pitch in to support this work, and it's fun to do. Just take out your phone and aim your camera at that black and white square in the middle of your screen here, and it will transport you to a donor page. Or if you can't do that, you can type in peoplesworld.org and click on the donate page. You see it at the bottom of the screen, peoplesworld.org. This news is free to everybody, but a little bit coming each month, coming from a lot of people, will help keep us going. So think about clicking the sustainer button when you go to that donate page and sign up for $5 a month. Thanks. Okay, enough of that commercial announcement. And now we do have some time to go to some of the questions that were put into the chat. So let me go to the first one that came in early. And this has to do with our questioner, Janice, wanted to talk more about healthcare for immigrants. You know, people who don't have Social Security numbers are left out of Medicare. They're left out of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and other programs that they pay taxes through their TIN numbers to support. How do you see the struggle for healthcare for immigrants right now? Alberto, would you like to address that?
Definitely. I want to remind everybody that the undocumented workers are taxpayers. You know, taxes are collected from their checks every week, and they cannot, so they don't get return from the IRS. You know, they accumulate a lot of money on Social Security and Medicare without prospect of not getting it back. And I think it's a political decision, and it can be a reflection of our strength when we push hard for it, right? But this is something which will be demanding, because it's not a giveaway as some people might think. You know, undocumented workers contributed to the system by paying their taxes. And then our result should be to fight hard to make it happen.
Thank you. And let me see if Alejandro has another take on this question about the struggle for healthcare for immigrant workers.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw a lot of how, you know, the same struggles, how undocumented folks face those barriers throughout, like, you know, the entire process, whether that's in the workplace or, you know, trying to get, you know, access to affordable medical help, or even their medication and such. I think that the pandemic really helped a lot of people realize what that looks like because of the scale at what it was that it was happening, and I think that, you know, throughout the year during COVID, you know, anything from testing to vaccines was really an obstacle for folks for many reasons. Some that are like actual true like regulatory barriers, and others are just the fears that folks have based on our history of having so many barriers and the fear of deportation. I mean, you know, there were many opportunities for folks to get vaccinated, but the simple fear that they might ask for an ID at a location, you know, discouraged folks from going. And you know, if for instance, someone that didn't have to, you know, if they ask for an ID and they could say like, I don't have one, and they could still get them vaccinated, that could still, you know, be enough fear for them to leave and then tell their friends not to go there either because of, you know, those barriers. So there are very true like institutional barriers, and there's also just the barriers because of the culture that we live in, where folks essentially in many cases are living in fear, and you know, any situation where they have to, you know, show an ID to an agency or an institution that may seem like it's the government or something of the sort, it's going to discourage folks from participating. So I think it's very important that we continue to fight to ensure that our undocumented friends and family are included in the healthcare that we receive, and that there are those types of opportunities, and that we continue to fight to get coverage for everybody, regardless of status. And you know, that's healthcare, and that's really in all benefits as a whole, as Alberto was speaking to. You know, that's, you know, folks are paying into systems that they don't get to benefit from, and you know, really, whether that's because of, you know, we're talking about the virus or we're talking about anything else, if there is a group of people that are not being protected, that are not safe, that are not being that don't have access to safety, then, you know, truly, you know, the masses as a whole are not safe, or not healthy, or not being protected either. So thank you.
All right, so let's go on to the next question. And I wanted to start again with Alberto, because this question is asking us, how does the military industrial complex continue to play a role through foreign aid in the displacement of people in Latin America? And I know you shared with us, you know, your history of coming from a Garifuna community, which is a population of Afro and indigenous people who have really suffered from being forcibly moved and displaced many times in their history. And even I understand that there's almost as many of the Garifundo people in the United States as there are in Honduras at this time because of this displacement, this forcible displacement. So how do you see the military industrial complex playing a role in that?
I think it's at the center of it, right? Basically, many of the decisions that the government of United States takes is decision to accommodate the interests of the military industry. You know, we are the testing ground for many of the military equipment that are developed. You know, in Honduras during the late 1980s, they have kind of many facilities. They call it CRANE. I think that was an acronym for it, and that was testing ground. You know, and basically the Marines were at the service of the Honduran government, and you will not see the differentiation between them and the local military. So it, at least from the popular point of view, it was one unit, you know. So yes, it's been a devastating thing, the consequences of that policy from Puerto Rico to all Latin America. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And Alejandro, you made remarks at Indigenous Peoples' Day event last year, where you said that that you blamed the mega corporations for taking indigenous lands for climate change and other actions that have forced people to migrate. So can you comment also on how you see the military industrial complex continuing to play a role in displacing people from Latin America?
Yeah, and you know what? I think what I would contribute is that I mean, I think it's been mentioned a little bit before of where money can be going, and just knowing how much of our taxes are going into essentially into us policing the world, intervening, and essentially just building up our military to be one that is able to have the influence that it has, and that can create the damage that it does. So I think that it's it's very much a big part of it. Much of it is profit driven, and I think that's the same case when we're talking about the prison industrial complex. It's creating dangerous conditions, pushing people out of their homes, essentially to profit off of that process. And I think that it's one of the, I mean, it's incredibly sad, and something that we're going to continue to push against, but it's one of the most powerful pieces of the puzzle of what the world that we live in, and the devastating circumstances that many people have to face.
Thank you. So there's
Can I add a little bit to what Alejandro presentation on that regard? Yeah. The Garifuna people lives mainly on the north coast of the Honduras, and the development of the tourist industry, was also one of, the basis for people to leave their town and hit the road to the United States, because we were completely displaced from those areas to develop the tourist industry. And with regard to absolutely nothing. So they even changed the language of the Constitution of Honduras about owning, up to 40 meters from certain areas on the beach. They changed all of that, and on the keys, they changed all of that. We have keys exclusively occupied by fishermen. They the government gave it in concession to the hotel industry on the name of conservation, and displaced the fishermen from there that were conserving it. So it's incredible.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, a horrible example, but so we're going to get to, before we get to the last question, there was an important comment I wanted to reiterate here, and that was about ending the blockade of Cuba, which I think figures into all of these issues. And I think it's something we all need to keep in the forefront of our minds. So the last question comes from a listener in Virginia, and he asks that another disaster is looming for Americans, particularly immigrants, people in immigrant communities like his neighbors, in that the eviction moratorium from the pandemic is going to be ending the 1st of July. And that means that probably millions of people are going to be faced with a sudden housing crisis. And remember, these are people who didn't have access to the extended unemployment or other assistance. So the questioner asks, is there anything cooking about this at the national level? But I'd like to expand the question to see if folks have anything to report of what's going on in their own work or whatever. So let me go to you first, Alejandro.
Yeah, is there any, I don't know if there's anything in the national level, and if there was, I don't have a lot of confidence that it would pass, and anything that would truly be, I mean, if there is, I'm happy to fight for it. And unfortunately here in Iowa, I can't speak to other states, I wouldn't see anything at the state level either. And even in the local level, looking at our city council and, our county leadership, it's developers, corporations, they're going to be the ones that are going to get the relief and the support, and and unfortunately everyone else is going to get the violence of eviction, and so what we've seen here, that I'm sure has been happening, I know has been happening in other communities, is just the continued development of mutual aid networks. Whether that's rent relief funds, whether that is just organizing around our neighborhoods and around each other, and being able to be there, as, again, mutually to support each other, to fill in the gaps that we know are going to continue to be, there to be there, while still doing the work, of course, of like trying to change local, state, and federal laws as much as we can, but knowing that unfortunately these are issues that are happening today, not in 10 years. I mean, they will be, unfortunately, they likely will be happening in 10 years, but they're happening right now. This is something that, unfortunately, again, even at our local level, not much has been truly done to protect folks from, this very terrible situation that many folks were left in. So I would say, that continue, find or create mutual aid networks there in your community. Whether that's, again, a rent relief fund, that has been incredibly helpful. We've also seen some of the mutual aid folks here, helping out the houseless. There's been a lot of recent evictions of houseless camps here. So we've had folks that, with some of that funding or just fundraising of their own, were able to raise a lot of money in a short amount of time to be able to, relocate folks, house folks temporarily, and, protect their personal items. And that same level of support exists for the local level, but until we continue to develop that type of work, there's still going to be folks that are not going to have as much access to that type of support, and especially if we live in communities that aren't talking to each other, that aren't building community and building the infrastructure outside of the current institution that is going to continue to play the same game, and pass that money along to, again, developers and corporations. So.
Thanks. Thank you. That's a really good point. Alberto, I know your work in organizing has been tremendous, about organizing people in unions and workplace issues, but it's even gone beyond that to organize people and workers into political campaigns. And I know on May 1st, there was a pandemic relief for all caravan in Hartford.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if, in relation to that, is there some idea of addressing this looming eviction crisis that's going to be facing folks?
Yes, again, we have been working hard with this group of workers, and we have already those issues happening. It's not for us. It's not the future. It's the present. Many of those workers had to rely in services from the community. Actually, they was one of our leaders of the unit that's not in the union yet. He ran a campaign to help people from eviction and to get food banks, and he was a victim himself. He had been working for 27 years for McDonald's, and because of his union activities, after the reduction of force during the pandemic, he was let go. And when they recall everybody, they left him out. He and 4 or more of his co-workers. Right now, we have a case before the labor board with that, But those things are happening already. Many of those workers are confronting it, and we have to do something to confront that now, because it's a now thing.
That's so true. That's such an urgent question. I want to deviate a little bit from the agenda and lean on my co-moderators here to see if either of you want to jump in on this question, or both of you, I should say. So, Joe, I wonder if you are in touch with any movements or prospects of fighting this eviction crisis that's looming.
Yeah, we have, well, within the League of United Latin American Citizens for Latino, we're discussing this issue right now. There's actions, here on a state level. We need to take this on. There's a lot of different types of mobilization, which we've all been involved in on different levels. But we have to move forward. We have to build those coalitions to have a united front to take this on. Within the Latino community, that is something that, as Alejandro pointed out to before, we need to build those bridges between our different Latino organizations, not only on a local level, but on a national level, to move forward in just creating that movement. The Black Lives Matter movement that happened last year, getting out onto the streets, was very important for change. And we need to do that again now to protect people so they will not get evicted.
Absolutely. Jesus, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
I support what Joe Henry's saying. I think here in Tucson, we see a lot of our comrades here working to further those efforts. I think it requires a lot of agency, a lot of coalition building, a lot of really understand the reality of what that entails, what's at risk for many people, what it looks like, humanizing that experience for people, what it entails when they lose their homes and they're left without a place to live, like what that does to people. So I think a lot of times we don't reflect on the privilege we have when one of us have a steady income and we live, but what the reality is for many, many people out there. So it really entails raising significant awareness and making as much noise as possible and taking it to the streets. I think that's what it's going to entail as well. So support what our comments saying.
We have to all be determined that no one is going to be put out of their home, that we just have to do that. I agree. On that note, let me turn the moderation over back to you, Jesus.
Okay. All right, colegas, comrades, community, buenas tardes again. A big thank you to everyone for your invaluable time and attending the Immigrant Rights Town Hall, Si Se Puede. No human being is illegal, hosted by People of the World, Mundo Popular, our coalitions, Communist Party USA. A sincere thank you to our panelists, Maria Elena Durazo, Alberto Bernardis, Alejandro Ortiz, our interpreters, for their commitment and hard work, and all our community participants. I have one reminder. Watch for the updated edition of Immigration Myths versus Facts in July. And then I have some concluding thoughts with the call to action.
Could you show the slide? We want the slide, yeah.
Yeah, can you put up the slide real quick? Thank you. So my thoughts real quick. As a critically responsive math within the United States of America, we must continue to push the envelope in struggling for the dignity of the most vulnerable. We have not finished expunging the legacy or ideology of chattel slavery within the cultural fabric of the nation state. There is value placed on profit through the dehumanization of human beings as a commodity, but common people are denied their dignity and contribution to society. It must be people before profits. We must never accept families being separated through state-sanctioned raids that terrorize communities through deportation and humans herded into detention centers. We know what happened in the 1940s. We must never accept the death of deterrence with the desert as a weapon, as a strategy to curtail immigration along the border. It is not okay when mothers are found with their children in their arms dead. We must remember the hurt and injuries where fascism has prevailed with such actions. We must never accept blind patriotism as a one-way only lane for inclusion for whom belongs. We must be constructive and outspoken, not be afraid to exercise our freedom of conscience and enact agency with the courage of consciousness in the spirit of social justice for the common good. Our call to action, the legal status for all 11 million undocumented immigrants, organize, march, outreach, and call Congress, include a path to citizenship for all undocumented immigrants in the budget reconciliation process, and ongoing, keep our families together, end deportations, defund Border Patrol and ICE, and the end militarization of the borders, end US intervention causing migration, stimulus benefits for all, pass the PRO Act, build coalitions, organize, organize, organize. Muchísimas gracias. Creator be with all of you. Pasen buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Los caballitos del río galopan aguas arriba, con las crines de cristal y las patas encendidas, van levantando dorado